Kimberly Underwood, Director of Digital News Media at FCA International Signal Magazine. I'd like to welcome you to our Signal Media Executive Interview Series. Today, I'm sitting down with Gregory Rudy to speak about the role of cryptography in protecting operational environments from escalating threat levels. Greg is the General Manager of Ultra's U.S. cyber business that has developmental locations in Germantown, Maryland, and Tampa, Florida. Greg has over 20 years of both engineering and management experience in embedded cybersecurity solutions for government and commercial customers. He has worked previously at several companies, including SafeNet, where he was lead security engineer of the first Type 1 certified tactical handheld and tablet computer for the U.S. Army. In 2012, he joined an engineering firm that was acquired by Greenhill Software, and there he focused on cryptography for commercial businesses, the automotive industry, the medical sector, and critical infrastructure. And just prior to joining Ultra, Greg led the business development and sales team at Raytheon's Secure Information Systems division. This brought him back to those Type 1 efforts, driving strategy across link, network, space, and embedded product lines. Greg holds a bachelor's degree in computer engineering from Cal Poly in St. Louis Obispo and an MBA from Johns Hopkins. Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Kimberly. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you virtually, and I'm thrilled to talk to you about cryptographic protections. It sounds like such a crucial and interesting field.
It's the right time for it, and I'm glad to be here to be able to talk to it with you.
Yeah, can you talk about, seems like the role that cryptography plays across the government and the commercial sectors seems pretty broad. Can you kind of identify some of the threats that determine the best solution across those different platforms?
Yeah, so when you look at cybersecurity, there's a number of different, obviously it's a very broad industry. And so if you're gonna slice the pie in half, probably the easiest way to do it is IT security versus embedded security. And so when you look at IT security, that's typically what we get on our computers and our desktops that does virus protection and email scanning. And in those particular environments, you've got a lot of processing power, you've got a lot of resources like memory, and but you have to be flexible. The computers are designed to run software that the hardware manufacturers don't quite understand, right? So you have a lot of design that comes out of that, which really is focused on pattern matching. Once you detect that like a virus has come in, all the virus protections is pattern matching. And then also admin rights, basically controlling what people can do or can't do and responding to that. But when you look at embedded security, those products are different, right? So a product like a car, like a radio, like even an encryptor, if we're talking about network encryptors, have a very specific purpose and is really kind of designed to only do one thing. Now, if I can make it do more, that's better for me and my product, but you have to kind of build that in. And it's a very specific software. I only run the software that's released from a company. Car companies don't allow you to put your own software on the automobile. And so, likewise, what that comes down to is doing a security architecture. When you look at a design for a product, it really comes down to defending against sniffing, spoofing, and code injection. So if I could draw a box around the outside of any kind of product, sniffing is looking and seeing what data is going in and out of that product, either from through a network interface or from some other system, and trying to get some information as a result of what's coming in and out. Spoofing is pretending like I'm a valid user, and then being able to control a particular box to do some functionality that is not authorized to do. And then code injection is actually kind of that third level where you're finding a hole in that software. Maybe it's a 0-day attack, and being able to inject code that opens up all these back doors that completely gets around any of the encryption or authentication kind of designs that you put in there to basically get you full access. And attackers will use that for what they call a pivot attack, which is getting onto one device and being able to access something else, or look at the network traffic on an internal network that they wouldn't be able to get to unless they've got kind of malicious code on that device.
Right, sure. We hear nowadays a lot about kind of, supply chain risks when it comes to, software or even, um, hardware. Can you talk about kind of open source versus proprietary considerations? What are the benefits of open source versus proprietary when it comes to cryptography and embedded security?
So the obvious answer, right, is price. So open source has certainly got a price advantage and a lot of support when it comes to different platforms. If you're an application developer and you don't really need to know a lot about security and you're just trying to get the product out, then an open source platform is a viable option depending on kind of what threats you're designing to or what environment that product is being put into. Regardless of whether it's commercial or open source or proprietary or whatever, it needs to go through some type of evaluation and follow some type of cryptographic standards. So we don't really invent any algorithms anymore. We embed those and we do it in a way that can be applied. So there's a number of different kind of certifications that are out there in kind of ascending levels, right? The first one that everybody kind of knows about is FIPS 140-2, or now it's 140-3 is the NIST standard. What that does is it actually, step one or level one of that certification is just to put a stamp on it to make sure that the algorithm is working properly, that it attests to say, yes, it's following AES or some other algorithm. And then as you get higher in the FIPS, the focus is on the cryptographic module. That's this kind of special boundary inside any product or system where keys are stored, where all the algorithms are performed, and kind of those requirements are specific to like the tamper protection around it to make sure that nobody can get in and access any of that kind of special sauce, right? Then there's common criteria. Common criteria is how you implement that cryptographic module, that FIPS module, into a design to turn it into something like a VPN network equipment, or a Wi-Fi radio, or any number of different devices there's a number of protection profiles out there, which gives us an assurance that there's a higher level of encryption that's been put into this system, or at least security, in kind of addressing those threats that I talked about earlier, the sniffing, the spoofing, the code injection, that you've got defenses in there to be able to address them. And then another kind of more popular one that's gaining, I guess, attention is the common solutions for, I'm sorry, what is it? Commercial CSFC, yeah. Commercial Solutions for Classified. I always mess that up. The CSFC is really combining multiple common criteria solutions in order to get to that government level of crypto. And then obviously getting up into the type 1, which is NSA's, National Security Agency's flavor of encryption. That is a all-inclusive, beyond just the crypto and the crypto module. It's beyond the how it's implemented. They're involved with you at every point in time to go through the process and get that certification that gets you up to the highest classification levels. But they also look at things like fail-safe design, making sure in case there's a problem that nothing gets leaked out, emissions and the way that the signals are routed, as well as like even manufacturing and the supply chain. So, open source to proprietary, it all kind of depends on as you get higher in that security level, you get further away from the open source because it's really more specific to how that crypto is put onto your device. But it then comes down to the trade-off of more of the programmatics and the supply chain of it to make sure that you can still get a product to market given the certification and what's the level.
Right, sure. And how would that apply, or what advice, I guess, would you have for government users, versus looking at open source versus proprietary? Obviously, those cost considerations are important, but what other things would you recommend they think about when deciding open source versus proprietary?
So government is doesn't have as much of a choice. There's a number of different standards out there that require at least a FIPS level 2 cryptographic module, possibly common criteria, CSFC or type 1. They have done a good job to push out and require crypto on a majority of the products that they build. So even Ultra's Wi-Fi routers as well, or wired Ethernet encryptors, all have that kind of stamp that basically gets you onto the network and is even used, even if it's for something that's not classified, like building automation commands or some of the smart device type of connectivity solutions out there. Where you get a little bit more on the edge is in the commercial space, where, is it really required? What's the requirement? What's the justification for spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars in engineering and crypto labor and products and libraries to be able to check a box which customers may or may not pay for? We all think it's important, but when it comes down to it, are we really willing to pay for it?
Right, sure. And then kind of the complex threat environment that the US faces on a daily basis, certainly is complex. And kind of as threat levels escalate, how would you recommend that product developers adapt their designs, their cryptographic designs, or their approaches? What would you recommend there?
So what I think is interesting, and I go back to an experience that I had in a commercial company, and one of the, automotive industry does a really good job in comparison to others in implementing embedded security. Actually, one of the most robust systems I had seen is in like a tractor company that had connectivity, and it really is about what is it that you're protecting, right? It's what's the value of that information in what justifies the level of security that goes on. So I think the answer is really, it comes down to ultimately what is the funding that's available? What do we need to, how do we get out? How do we get our product to market faster? And then everything has a cost and schedule that kind of goes along with it. So the purpose of engaging with a security expert or an organization like Ultra is really to understand all the different environments that are out there, and really get an understanding of not only the product itself, but what is your supply chain, right? How are you manufacturing this particular product? And are you having to move keys into it in different countries? Or, what is some of the other things that you need to do, like lifecycle management? How am I going to do software updates and things like that? So all of that gets kind of baked into the decision about what is the right security controls that you need for your products.
Right, sure. And you mentioned keys and having the option of moving keys into other countries. Can you talk about key management? How does it fit in the picture? How is it being used today? And kind of what are the benefits or the necessities for that type of approach?
Yeah, so keys are, I often kind of joke that are the afterthought of every security engineer here, because we spend a lot of time focused on the device itself and making that crypto module and that boundary as secure as possible. And we do secure boot and check every piece of software on it. We validate everybody who needs to talk to it. And then at some point in the design process, somebody says, well, how are we going to get keys into this thing? And so the purpose and why it's so important is because if these keys that are used to sign code that are part of the secure boot process, or keys that are used to establish other session keys for secure communication get compromised, then it's not just one device that is compromised. It's the entire set of devices. It's all of them. And so how you go about doing it in your supply chain is almost as important as it is in your on the device itself. So getting the key down to the manufacturing floor in a manner where you can track and have it metered individually into each device, even when you're using subcontractors and other companies not your own, it is a critical task to be able to make sure that the keys are securely distributed during manufacturing. And then likewise out in the field, and if you put this into kind of a military environment, there's nothing worse than having some of the guys out in the field have a key that's lost. Everybody will tell a story about equipment that goes down or accidentally zeroizes, and there's no fill device near them that's able to store these keys. And so they've got to get in the vehicle and drive back 5 hours in each direction to go get a new one. And so it doesn't work otherwise without keys. And so it's just as important to be able to get that secured.
Right, sure. And I'd love to pick your brain, given the expert that you are in cryptography, kind of about the future and kind of what trends are you seeing emerging in the embedded environment and cybersecurity industry today?
Well, I think the big driver in the government space is quantum resistance and being able to defend against new quantum attacks. That is, while important, it actually is incredibly important. But what it's doing is it's allowing us to upgrade a number of different devices that haven't been touched in a while, so that we can bring the best type of information to them, or best type of technology to them, and do tech refreshes, not just for the crypto, but communication speeds. And so that little driver of quantum resistance is kind of pushing out and allowing everybody to upgrade all their technology for the better. So that's certainly one. I'd say in the past, the crypto chip itself, and this is really driven by the certifications where you needed a crypto boundary, required a separate ASIC or a separate processor, which led to some really hefty designs where you have all this separation back and forth inside a system. So the idea of having FPGAs and multi-processor system on chips right now, like Xilinx, and those are really driving probably the future of what I would see as cryptographic product design right now, because it's allowing things to get smaller. It's allowing the amount of swap to be reduced, so size, weight, and power, which is always kind of an important consideration. It's allowing us to reuse architectures in not necessarily a physical form factor way, because every product is ultimately different. That form factor being as an architecture is allowed to be kind of inside that chip, which will simplify further certification and reuse into other products. So there's a number of government programs that are going on right now to be able to do basically having a certified architecture that can be reused for different products. And so we're spending a lot of time staying involved with that and supporting customers who want to be able to use those in their new designs, to be able to embed them. And the benefit of reusing those architectures is not only do you get swap benefits, but you also have simplified certification paths when you're leveraging something that's already gone through the rigor of what an NSA Type 1 or a CSFC certification would do for you. And then really the last piece is we're spending a lot of time looking at getting cybersecurity down to the tactical edge. And so with all the smart meters and devices out there, not only in like a perimeter defense or smart device, IoT device environment, and how to bring that information back, but also, when you get into wearables and down to the soldier level, how do I either pass information down to them or get information back from them into a kind of common area or a common cloud even space where you can do some additional processing and kind of increase the knowledge that goes back and forth between all of these sensors that we have out there. If it's not secure, and this is kind of where cybersecurity lays nicely over top of everything is it's about moving that information around in a way that you can't be sniffed, can't be spoofed. You can't replace software on it that's going to change the operation of it and give somebody open doors in your system.
Right, sure. And just lastly, kind of over your 2 decades of experience in specializing in cryptography, do you feel optimistic for the future, kind of from where we've been, or the capabilities that you've seen over the years? How do you feel about the future and the future protections?
I think I'm very optimistic. I think that what we're seeing, though, is the number of devices that are out there have grown substantially, and I think that we're starting to respond, and we're getting knowledge out there where it used to be just change the default password of your backdoor login, to now really putting some design in about, like I just talked about with the crypto modules and the certifications, and making sure that keys are protected in the supply chains. That's probably within the past 10 years. Where I think we need to move a little bit is there's still an idea that security is specific to the product. And so having these type of supply chain key distribution systems and all of the security architecture that you would need to defend against these type of threats is a substantial investment, and a lot of products can't sustain that. So, the companies that are doing it right, the businesses and organizations, are seeing this like a capital investment. They're seeing it as investing in an Oracle database or Microsoft license or some programming tool, and building it in such a way that they can take advantage and use it for not just one program. They're going to use it for all the programs, which is then simplifies everything, simplifies certification, makes things deployments that much faster, and generally increases the security of their products. And then once they do that, then there's a number of different revenue generating type of features that can come from that. So things like license control and being able to do different features on your products, or customer loyalty programs, all that is possible when you have a secure platform to go on. And so plenty of opportunity. It's a great time to be in cybersecurity. I love the opportunity, and all the people that I've worked with in both commercial as well as government space. Every problem is unique, and that's the best part about the industry, is working and understanding how each one of these different products are used.
Right, sure. Well, those are all my questions. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, nothing further. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you, Greg. Thanks for walking us through these cryptographic related considerations. I'm glad to learn about sniffing, spoofing, and coding injection vulnerabilities and the need to protect against that. And I'm glad to hear you're optimistic about the future of cryptography. For more information about Ultra, please visit their website. And thanks for joining us, and have a good day.
Thank you.